Hi everyone. So I live in Japan and I'm black, in case you couldn't tell. I like to make videos on TikTok about my experience being black in Japan, as well as many other things. A few months ago, a few of my videos went pretty viral, and those who watched the videos had quite a few things to say about the videos. Before we go further, I want to show you those videos. Oh my gosh, y'all. Today I just got asked a question that I've never been asked before by a kindergartner. Now keep in mind, y'all, these kids don't have a lot of exposure to black people, especially face to face, so remember that. I walked into a classroom, was saying hi to some kids. This boy walked up, rubbed my arm, and then smelled it. And I was like, oh, I'm not chocolate. Then his friend walks up next to him, she's like, you're not chocolate? I was like, no, I'm not chocolate. And she was like, what are you? I was like, I'm a boy. And she was like, are you a human? It's like, yeah, you're a human, and I'm a human. And then she looked at my ears. I was kneeling next to them, and she looked at my ears. She's like, wow, she's touching my ear. She's like, so small. And your hair, she touched my hair and went like, whoa. So we all know that I teach at a school in Japan. I teach kindergartners, and they don't know how to react to me being brown, right? We've been over this. But today I had yet another unique interaction with one of the kids, this boy who's not in my class, who I see pretty often and have been saying hi to. I went over to his class and was saying hello and giving them high fives, and he's like hugging my leg, and he grabs my arm and smells it. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And he's like, you smelling it? I'm like, I'm not chocolate. And he's like, you're not chocolate? I'm like, nope. And he's like, McDonald's cocoa? And I'm like, I'm not McDonald's chocolate. And then he's like, chocolate cake? And I'm like, no, I'm not chocolate cake. He's running through all these different reasons for why I could be brown, and they're all the most ridiculous, but the most adorable things in the world. Is so funny. So obviously the things that the kids in those videos said were pretty wild, especially for those of us who live in a multi-ethnic society like the US. Japan, however, is not a multi-ethnic society. The foreign community makes up about 2 to 3% of the population. So it's no wonder that the kids who rarely see people who look different than them outside of a few times on TV or the internet are suddenly not only seeing people who look very different again than them, but they're interacting with them on a day-to-day basis. They have questions. However, despite my many attempts to explain this to those who watched my video and have had some pretty critical and in some cases pretty vile insults that they hurl towards my students, their parents, and the nation of Japan in general, it's just hard for people to wrap their minds around how a society as advanced and modern as Japan can still operate like this. So I want to try to explain a little bit about Japan's relationship with black people, what that looks like, and what the experience that I've had in Japan is, as well as other foreigners here in the community. I don't know if it'll be coherent or make a whole lot of sense, because I'm pretty bad at explaining things, but I will do my best. So, here we go. Japan's history with black people goes way, way, way back. To our knowledge, Africans first arrived in the country in the mid-16th century when they were brought over by Europeans as slaves and crew members. Unfortunate, I know. In the late 16th century, one of the most well-known black figures to have ever lived in Japan was brought into the country. This was Yasuke. No, I have not seen the Netflix series. Yasuke was a slave of the Italian Jesuit Alessandro Valignano when he was brought over to the country, and I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation. He went on to establish a life in the country serving as a samurai under Oda Nobunaga, a nobleman in the country, and is assumed to have lived out the rest of his days there. Since then, there have been a number of prominent black figures who have lived in the country of Japan. In recent years, there have been fully black residents like mixed martial artist Bobby Ologun and pop singer Chris Hart, as well as mixed race residents like beauty pageant title holder Ariana Miyamoto, who was crowned Miss Japan in 2015, and professional tennis player and 4-time Grand Slam singles champion Naomi Osaka. So clearly there are black people in media for Japanese people to see, but again with such a small percentage, 2 to 3% of the population being foreign in Japan, and just a fraction of that percentage being black foreign residents, it's no wonder that kids have such strong reactions when they see me. I mean, the amount of stares that you get from people can be a bit jarring at first. And this happens with both kids and adults. Adults tend to be more discreet with it, but it happens with both. Now, I've showed you what kinds of reactions the kids have to seeing me as a brown person. And while they're not necessarily positive, they're not exactly negative either. That being said, I do think that Japanese people tend to have a bit of a negative impression of black people in their minds. And there's no way I can know this for sure, mostly due to the fact that Japan is such a polite country, and while I do get stares constantly, there's no indication really that I'm disliked by the people who are staring at me. It's just more curiosity, you know? Based on the fact, though, that Western movies and music videos have often portrayed black people in a sort of hostile and negative light, and those portrayals are often the only portrayals that Japanese people have of black people in the media, I would imagine that Japanese people are at least a little bit uncomfortable or nervous around us. Couple that with the fact that a large chunk of the black population in Japan comes from Nigeria. Nigerians have a pretty poor public image in Japan. This is mostly due to the fact that many Nigerians work in pretty shady areas and like bar districts, and they are often involved with crimes and scams. This casts a big shadow on all black people in Japan, and even affects other minorities in Japan who aren't African in origin, but have darker skin tones as well. Something that happens often in Japan is policemen stopping foreigners and performing ID checks. This happens to all kinds of people in Japan, including Japanese people, but it's no secret that it happens way more often to foreign people, and it happens even more often to black foreign people in Japan. One time I was going to get a haircut in an area in Tokyo called Roppongi. This is an area that has a heavy concentration of foreign people. And I saw 3 policemen approaching me, and my heart immediately, started beating fast. I'd been stopped once before when I was visiting an area up north in Japan called Sendai. I was visiting my sister there, and some policemen stopped me to do the same thing. But it had never happened again since then, up until this day in Roppongi. So I knew the likelihood was kind of high. I knew the stories, I'd heard them all before. But I just hoped that it wouldn't happen to me on this particular day. So I came up to the policemen, and they passed me. They didn't stop me, and I was so happy. I was like, okay, I can go to my haircut, I'm good, I'm safe. And then about 10 to 15 seconds later, I hear a "suimasen," and I was like, oh no, my heart just sank. And it wasn't that I was nervous about what they might do to me. The kind of violence that you see happening in the US often doesn't happen here with policemen. It was just more that I knew some things just never change. So they asked if they could perform the ID check, and the fact that they asked me if it was okay implied that I could have said no, but I didn't want to cause even more of a scene and have them, be more suspicious of me by saying no. So I said, yes, go ahead, and I let them check me. Thankfully, one of them could speak English. So they performed their ID checks, they're going through my pockets, they're looking at my bag, they're looking through all the little pockets in my wallet and everything. And they don't find anything suspicious or stolen or anything like that. I have the proper identification, and as they're about to leave, I asked the one that spoke English, I said, why'd you stop me? And his response was, we're stopping many people today because Roppongi is a very dangerous area. There are many dangerous people here. So it's not only you, we're stopping many people. And I didn't believe him for 1 second. I did believe that they were stopping many people, but it would have been interesting to see what the people they had been stopping looked like. Because when they stopped me, there were lots of other people around, including other foreign people. But I was the only black foreign person in that area when they stopped me. So obviously this is an issue. This is a negative stereotype that these policemen are attaching to me as a black person. That's discrimination. That's racism. Call it what it is. But something that many people outside of Japan looking in often confuse for racism is actually xenophobia. Xenophobia is the fear or strong dislike of people from other countries. So instead of focusing on one ethnic group in particular to not like, it's everybody who's not from your country, basically. During the Meiji era, a time where Japan began shifting from its isolated feudal society to a more modern industrialized nation, heavily influenced by Western ideas, as well as during World War II, and for some time post-World War II, Japan was known to exhibit very strong xenophobia towards people living in Japan who weren't Japanese. Over time, there's definitely been a gradual shift away from that type of mindset among the natives here, but there are still clear effects that linger to this day. Things like official statements from establishments, like when a health center in Ibaraki issued a statement to Japanese residents advising them to refrain from eating with foreigners in order to avoid contracting COVID-19, which they later retracted and apologized for, as well as just the infamous multitude of xenophobic comments that you find on the internet from Japanese netizens. There are so many out there. This isn't to say that all Japanese people operate with this mindset, much in the same way that not all Americans hold similarly prejudiced views. Many do, but many don't as well. In conclusion, all these different factors contribute to the day-to-day interactions I have with Japanese people, including my young students. I've never once felt extremely uncomfortable or threatened in any way by the things that have been said to me. I have felt a little offended at times, but knowing that the offensive thing is coming from a small child, I can look past it. Something that many who viewed those story times from before assumed about those interactions was that I just looked at the whole thing as really cute and hilarious and just moved on with my day. The end. They knew nothing about the conversations I had with those students explaining why my skin is brown and theirs isn't. They don't know anything about the conversations I've had with my students explaining that my skin is brown not because I'm dirty and that I've looked like this ever since I was a baby. They don't know about the times when I've shown my students pictures of black boys and girls and watched their eyes light up with excitement as they realize that we're the same. Those are moments that are so special to me, and I've actually made videos sharing those stories as well. To see people assume that I'm not doing a good job in representing my people to a nation that has so few of us has been really disheartening. I'd like to share a conversation that I had with some of my older students a while ago. So in my 5th grade class today, I had the kids pair up and I had them say something nice about the other kid. I had them say 2 nice things. Then I had them say 2 crazy things, not about the other kid, but just like in general, like some kind of outlandish, wildly untrue thing, like the sky is green or there's a gorilla outside. I used those 2 examples actually because the kids were kind of like, what do you mean? And so they kind of chuckled when I said the gorilla thing, because kids in Japan, they just find gorillas hilarious. I don't know why, they just always laugh when you bring up a gorilla. So some of them were asking if they could say this thing or this thing. And one boy was like, can I say Mr. Patrick is a gorilla? And the kids all like started like chuckling and stuff. And I didn't like, come down hard on him at first because I was like, I know he's not trying to be racist. Despite what my comment section likes to say, I know these kids aren't racist. They're kids being kids. They love to rag on the teacher. Like that's like all they do. So I had the kids do the exercise and I heard a few of them use that Mr. Patrick is a gorilla thing as they were, talking to their partner. So we finished. I was like, okay, before we move on, I want to tell you guys something. I'm not angry, but if you go to a country with many black people and you say, oh, you're a gorilla, maybe like a joke, it's funny, ha ha ha, it will be very, 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 very offensive to the black people that you're saying that to. They will not think it's funny. They'll be very angry. And they were like, oh, like they had no idea. They were, again, really shocked because in Japan, it's just like, they don't think about those kinds of things. And then one girl raised her hand and was like, Mr. Patrick, Black Lives Matter? And I was like, yeah, Black Lives Matter. You know that? And she's like, yeah. And a couple other kids were like, oh, yeah. They've heard it before. And so long story short, we got to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. We talked about the murder of George Floyd. We talked about racism in general. And they had lots of questions that I was able to answer. And so it was just great to have that opportunity to talk about this topic with them that I'm sure they never get to talk about outside of their homes. So it was an unfortunate thing that ended up becoming a really like positive and educational, experience for them. So that was cool.
This was such an amazing moment for me. I don't think I've ever had a conversation about the Black Lives Matter movement with students before. I just assumed they didn't know anything about it at all. But getting the chance to share just a little bit about it, and for them to have the opportunity to then ask me questions, and for me to be able to answer their questions about what the Black Lives Matter movement is, what it's like to be black in America, what it's like to experience racism, all these different things, it was something I'll never forget. It was only about 10 to 15 minutes of class, but I think it's something that they'll never forget as well. Being foreign in Japan is interesting, and being a black foreign person in Japan is real interesting. It's not easy, but it is something that will provide you with many stories, ones that you can then share on social media for a good laugh or two if you want. Everyone's experiences are different though. Some live for years in Japan and rarely have any weird or slightly uncomfortable things happen to them, and others have just story after story after story. I think most people who are black in Japan have story after story after story. I haven't met a single black person though who wasn't grateful for the opportunity they had to live here. It's not easy, but I know they wouldn't have changed a single thing. And my camera just died. Sorry for that. And that's the end, actually. But before I wrap up, I want to make it clear that this video is in no way meant to hate on Japan or bring it down in the eyes of other people. Those of us who live here chose to live here. And even though we may experience difficulty sometimes, we choose to remain here, because we genuinely love the country and the people. I've met so many amazing people in this country, and I'm very happy to call this place my home for now. And no country's perfect, right? The whole reason I wanted to address all this is because, like I said earlier, there's just so much confusion around how Japan works, what the black experience in Japan is, and honestly, whether or not people should be concerned if they come here. I get those questions in my DMs all the time. Most likely nothing super crazy or dangerous or life-threatening will happen to you if you visit or move here. The most that people will do is just stare. Every day. Every single day. But they'll also be so polite and kind and really make you feel welcome. It's a great country, and there are many amazing people who live here. So if you get the chance to visit, you definitely should. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned something new from it. If you've been to Japan before, what has your experience been? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't been to Japan before, would you be interested in visiting? What's interesting to you about Japan? What interests you the most? Comment below, and please give a like to this video if you don't mind. Maybe share the video. Maybe subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in my next video. Thank you so much for watching.
Y'all, this is footage of me running through what I'm going to say in the video. I'm just like running through in my head what the script says, and I look like I am actually insane. What is this?